Everyone ignored the lost old Arab man, until the black cleaning lady gave him a hand. He was a trillionaire. But at that moment, at 78 years old, Khalid al-Mansour was standing alone on a Chicago street corner at 3 in the morning, shivering in a snowstorm that turned the world white. His thobe was soaked, clinging to his thin body. The red and white keffiyeh on his shoulders weighed heavily with accumulated snow. He held a crumpled piece of paper with an address he could no longer decipher. The snow was falling so hard that he could barely see 3 meters ahead. Cars passed slowly, but none stopped. Khalid tried to hail a taxi, but the driver sped up when he saw him. He staggered to a closed store door, trying to protect himself from the icy wind that cut through his thin clothes. "Get out of here, old man," a man shouted from the window above. "Call the police if you don't leave." Khalid tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled, half in Arabic, half in English. His mind was a thick fog. He knew he had a family, but the details slipped through his fingers. A young couple hurried past, the woman pulling her boyfriend away. "Don't look at him, let's go," she whispered loud enough for him to hear. The cold was becoming unbearable. His lips were purple. He could no longer feel his feet. What no one on that street knew was that the confused man before them controlled an oil empire worth more than $2 trillion. That his children were mobilizing international security teams to search for him. That the man lost in the snow had dined with presidents the week before. Grace Williams, 52, was leaving her cleaning shift at the hospital 6 blocks away. She had been working the early morning shift for 8 years, cleaning rooms that doctors barely noticed. Her back ached. She was walking because the night bus had stopped running. 3 children depended on her salary, which barely covered the rent on the south side. The wind blew snow in her face. Grace pulled her thin coat tighter, but it didn't help. It was the same one she had worn 5 years ago, patched so many times that it looked like a quilt. She turned the corner and saw him. An elderly man, clearly Arab, leaning against a door, shivering violently. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Grace stopped. She should have kept walking. It was already dangerous to be on the street at that hour. But something in that man's face made her hesitate. The way he held that crumpled piece of paper. The way no one looked at him, as if he no longer existed. Grace knew that feeling. "Sir," she said softly, approaching him. "Are you okay?" Khalid looked up, confused, frightened. Then he saw the kind face, the hands extended without fear or disgust. "Lost," he muttered with a heavy accent. "Cold. I don't know where." Grace took the paper from his trembling hands. There was a phone number written in the corner in pen, almost erased by the snow. "Let me try to call, okay?" Before she could dial, a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out, flashlights pointed. "What's going on here?" The taller one approached, hand on his belt. "Officer, this gentleman is lost." "I'm just trying to help." The officer looked at Khalid suspiciously. "Do you know each other?" Grace shook her head. "No, sir. I just saw him here in the snow." The second officer interrupted. This old man was causing trouble in 2 stores. The owners called. Grace quickly explained. "He's confused. There's a phone here if we call." The taller officer cut her off. "We'll handle it. You can go." Grace looked at Khalid, shivering so hard he could barely stand. "He needs to get out of the cold. Look at him." The officer sighed irritably. "It's not your responsibility. Go home before I think you're together causing trouble." Grace felt afraid, but she didn't move. "But he'll freeze to death." The officer took a step forward. "I told you to leave. This is the last time I'll ask you politely." The younger officer spoke into his radio. "Central, we need an ambulance. Possible hypothermia." Grace took advantage of the situation and quickly dialed the number. The phone rang. Someone answered, a young voice in Arabic. "Hello?" Grace spoke quickly. "Your father is here. Michigan Street and 18th. He's lost and freezing." "My father." The voice exploded. "You found my father? Don't hang up." The police officer snatched the phone from Grace's hand. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Grace protested, tears in her eyes. "His family is looking for him." The police officer looked at the phone, still connected. The voice was screaming. Please. My father has Alzheimer's. We've been looking for him for 8 hours. The officer held the phone to his ear. Who am I speaking to? His face turned pale. Yes, sir. He's here. No, he's fine. Yes, immediately. He hung up and looked at Khalid as if seeing him for the first time. Then at Grace. Cole's supervision. Now. The younger man frowned. Why? The older man swallowed hard. Because we just found Khalid Al-Mansour. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What happens next will show that sometimes those who seem to have nothing are the ones who are willing to give everything. 15 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the street so fast they skidded on the snow. Men in dark suits got out before the cars even came to a complete stop, followed by paramedics carrying thermal blankets. From the second vehicle, an Arab man of about 45 jumped out running, his face marked by hours of despair. Ali Baba, he shouted, falling to his knees in the snow beside Khalid. Baba, thank God. His hands trembled as he wrapped his father in a tight embrace. Khalid blinked slowly, confusion giving way to a flash of recognition. Tariq, he murmured weakly. Yes, Baba. It's me. You're safe now. Paramedics wrapped Khalid in thermal blankets, checking his vital signs. Grace remained at a distance, leaning against the store wall, watching the scene unfold. The police officers were now visibly nervous, speaking quietly among themselves. The older one approached Tariq cautiously. Mr. Al-Mansour, we wanted to let you know that we found your father and... Tariq turned, his eyes red and angry. You found him. His voice was thick with restrained anger. How long have you been here? The officer hesitated. We arrived about 20 minutes ago, sir, but... Tariq pointed at Grace. So she got here first. She, who works cleaning hospitals for minimum wage, stopped to help my father while dozens of cars just drove by. One of the security guards in a suit approached Grace, his posture respectful. Ma'am, did you make the call? Grace nodded nervously. Yes, sir. I couldn't leave him there in the cold. The security guard said something quickly into a radio. Tariq stood up, walking toward her. Grace instinctively took a step back, but he stopped at a respectful distance. What's your name? He asked, his voice softening. Grace. Grace Williams. Tariq took a deep breath, fighting back his emotions. Grace, my father has advanced Alzheimer's. He left the house this afternoon while the nurses were changing shifts. We mobilized all our security teams, the police, helicopters. 8 hours searching in the blizzard. His voice broke. We thought we'd lost him. Grace didn't know what to say. I just did what anyone would do. Tariq shook his head slowly. No. Anyone else would have driven by. You stopped. You risked your time, your safety, to help a stranger. He paused. The police told me you almost got arrested for insisting on helping. Grace looked at the officers, who now avoided eye contact. I wasn't going to leave him there, sir. No matter what they said. One of the paramedics interrupted. Mr. Al-Mansour, we need to take your father to the hospital. His body temperature is dangerously low. Tariq nodded, but before turning away, he took an expensive leather wallet from his coat's inside pocket. Grace, please. He held out a wad of bills. As a thank you. Grace took a step back, her hands raised. No, sir. I don't want money. I just wanted to help. Tariq looked genuinely surprised. But you need it. Let me at least. Grace shook her head firmly. It wasn't about the money. It was because it was the right thing to do. Tariq stood still for a moment, studying her face. Then he put the money away and instead took a business card from his pocket. Then at least take this. My personal number. If you need anything at all, you call me. Grace took the card, more out of politeness than because she believed she would actually use it. The name was printed in gold letters, Tariq Al-Mansour, CEO, Al-Mansour Energy Corporation. As the paramedics loaded Khalid into the ambulance, the old man turned his head and his eyes met Grace's one last time. Even through the fog of Alzheimer's, something passed over his face, recognition, gratitude. He raised a trembling hand in a gesture of farewell. Grace waved back, tears finally falling down her frozen face. The SUVs and ambulance drove away, lights flashing in the snow, leaving Grace alone with the two police officers. The taller one cleared his throat. "Ma'am, about earlier, we were just following protocol." Grace just nodded, too tired to argue. She picked up her purse and started walking home, each step a struggle against the cold and exhaustion. What Grace didn't know was that inside the ambulance, Khalid was holding Tariq's hand and murmuring something in Arabic. "The woman. Find the woman." Tariq squeezed his father's hand. "I will, Baba. I promise." 3 days later, Grace was washing the hospital hallway floor when her supervisor, Mrs. Chun, appeared with a strange look on her face. "Grace, there's someone at the front desk asking for you." Grace frowned. "Who?" Mrs. Chun shook her head. "I don't know, but he came with security guards and is causing a commotion. He said he won't leave until he talks to you." Grace dropped the mop and walked to the reception desk, still wearing her yellow rubber gloves. There was Tariq Al-Mansour, now looking rested, flanked by two men in suits. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Grace. Finally." Grace blinked, confused. "Mr. Al-Mansour? What are you doing here?" Tariq approached her. "My father woke up today. For the first time in months, he had a moment of complete clarity. And the only thing he wanted to do was assure me that I had found the woman who saved his life." He paused. "He wants to meet you properly, to thank you in person." Grace looked at her hands, still encased in yellow rubber gloves, then at Tariq's impeccable suit. "I can't right now. I'm working." Mrs. Chin appeared behind her, her face red. "Williams, do you know this man?" Before Grace could answer, Tariq held out his hand. "Tariq Al-Mansour. Grace saved my father's life 3 days ago." Mrs. Chen blinked, processing. "Grace, you didn't tell me about this." Grace shrugged. "I didn't think it was important." Tariq smiled. "Can I take her for a few hours? My father is insisting." Mrs. Chen hesitated, but slowly nodded. Of course. Grace, you may go." The car was unlike anything Grace had ever seen inside. Soft leather, heated seats, total silence except for the soft sound of classical music. She kept her hands in her lap, aware that her work clothes smelled of cleaning products. "Where are we going?" she asked nervously. "Our temporary home here in Chicago," Tariq replied. "My father is recovering there. The doctors said he was lucky." Another 30 minutes in that cold and... He didn't finish the sentence. Grace looked out the window as they drove through the city, leaving the neighborhood she knew and entering areas where houses were hidden behind high gates. The car stopped in front of a stone mansion with snow-covered gardens. Grace swallowed hard. "Here." Tariq nodded. "It's temporary. Our main residence is in Dubai." He must have noticed the tension on her face. "Grace, relax. My father just wants to say thank you." Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, rugs that looked like they were worth more than Grace's entire apartment. A nurse met them in the hall. "Mr. Tariq, your father is in the conservatory. He's having a very good day." Grace followed nervously, her old sneakers squeaking on the marble floor. Khalid was sitting in a high armchair near huge windows overlooking the snowy garden. He was wearing an expensive wool robe, a cup of tea beside him. When he saw Grace, his eyes lit up with a clarity that had been missing that night on the street. "You," he said in perfect English, his voice stronger now. "The woman who stopped." Grace approached timidly. "How are you feeling?" Khalid held out a trembling hand and she took it gently. "Alive, thanks to you. Please sit down." Grace sat in the chair the nurse had brought. Khalid studied her for a long moment. "My son told me you refused to accept money." Grace shook her head. "That's not why I helped." Khalid smiled, tears welling in his eyes. "I know. And that's exactly why I need to do something for you." He looked at Tariq, who nodded and left the room. Grace was confused. "Sir, you don't have to do anything." "Really?" Khalid leaned forward. "Grace, I built my empire from nothing. I started as a laborer in oil fields in the desert. I know hard work. I know dignity." He paused. And I know real kindness when I see it. It's rare. Tarek returned carrying a leather briefcase. Khalid continued. How many children do you have? 3, Grace replied. 2 still in school, 1 in community college. Khalid nodded. Working how many? 2 jobs. Grace swallowed. 3, actually. Hospital at dawn, cleaning offices in the afternoon, weekends at a laundromat. Khalid closed his eyes for a moment, as if he felt physical pain upon hearing this. That ends today, he said firmly. Tarek opened the briefcase and took out some documents. Grace, my family runs a philanthropic foundation. We help people who demonstrate exceptional character. Khalid interrupted. You don't need charity. You need opportunity. Grace felt her heart race. I don't understand. Tarek placed the papers on the coffee table. We are offering a full scholarship for your 3 children. Any university they want. Housing, books, everything paid for. Grace felt tears welling up. What? No, I can't accept. Khalid raised his hand. I'm not finished. In addition, we are paying your apartment rent for the next 5 years. In full. Grace covered her mouth, sobs escaping. Why? Why so much? Khalid leaned back. Because you gave me maybe 30 more years of life. Because you put a stranger above your own safety. Because the world needs more people like you. Tarek added softly. And because we want you to work with us. Our foundation needs someone who understands what it really means to be in need. Someone with a heart to identify who deserves help. Grace shook her head, incredulous. But I just clean. I have no training. You have something better, Khalid said. You have empathy. Compassion. Moral courage. He paused. 3 nights ago, dozens of people saw me and did nothing. You risked getting arrested. You risked your safety. For a stranger who didn't even speak your language. Tears streamed freely down Grace's face now. I just did the right thing. Exactly, Khalid smiled. And we're going to do the right thing for you. Tarek placed a pen next to the documents. If you sign, all of this is official. Scholarships, rent, and a salary of $60,000 a year as a consultant for our foundation. Grace looked at the papers, then at the 2 men. Is this real? It's not a dream. Khalid chuckled softly. Very real. As real as that snow 3 nights ago. As real as your kindness. Grace picked up the pen with trembling hands, barely able to hold it. She signed, the letters coming out crooked from the tears blurring her vision. 3 months later, Grace was sitting in an office overlooking Lake Michigan, something she never imagined possible. The plaque on the door read Grace Williams, Director of Community Programs, Al-Mansour Foundation. Her cleaning uniform had been replaced by simple but dignified professional attire. Her hands, once cracked from chemicals, now held reports on families the foundation was helping. The most profound change was in her children's eyes. Marcus, the eldest, was now studying engineering at Northwestern University. Jasmine and David, the twins, were in a private preparatory program, their faces lit with a hope Grace hadn't seen in years. The phone rang. It was Tarek. Grace, can you come to the hospital? My father wants to see you. In the private room, Khalid was sitting on the bed, more fragile than 3 months ago, but his eyes still sparkled. Grace, he said softly. Sit down. She sat down beside him. Khalid held her hand with surprising strength. I don't know how much longer I'll be lucid. The clear moments are becoming rarer. Grace squeezed his hand. Don't talk like that. Khalid smiled. I'm at peace. I've lived 78 years. I've built empires. I've dined with kings. He paused. But that night in the snow, when I was lost, only one person stopped. A woman who had 3 jobs and nothing to gain. Tears rolled down his face. You reminded me of what really matters. Grace felt a lump in her throat. You changed my whole life. Khalid shook his head. You already had greatness. I just removed the obstacles. He pulled an envelope from the nightstand. This is for you. Don't open it now. Open it when I'm gone. Promise me you'll continue to be who you are. Don't let comfort harden your heart. 2 weeks later, Khalid Al-Mansour passed away in his sleep. Grace was one of the only outsiders invited to the private funeral. That night, alone in her apartment, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a document. Dear Grace, if you are reading this, I am gone. Don't be sad. You gave me the greatest gift. You reminded me that kindness still exists. The attached document is not payment. It is impossible to pay for what you have done. It is an investment in everything you represent. Use it wisely to multiply kindness. The world needs more people like you. With eternal respect, Khalid. The second document was a deed. Khalid had left her a property valued at $3 million, with instructions that half should be used to create a shelter for homeless people, and the other half invested for the perpetual income of her family. Grace fell to her knees, sobbing. Not out of sadness, but out of overwhelming gratitude. If she had walked by that night like everyone else, none of this would have happened. 5 years later, Grace's Light Shelter opened its doors on the south side of Chicago. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a complete center with employment, education, and mental health programs. Grace was there every day, working alongside volunteers. A local reporter did a story. How would you describe what happened that night? Grace thought for a moment. I didn't save a billionaire. I helped a human being who was suffering. The rest was a consequence of doing the right thing. The reporter pressed on. But you had everything to lose. Why take the risk? Grace looked into the camera. Because in the end, the only thing we take with us is the good we've done. Khalid gave me resources, but I gave him dignity when the world had made him invisible. Tariq visited the shelter often. One day, he found Grace in the garden where a statue of Khalid had been erected. You know, he said, my father had Alzheimer's for 3 years. But whenever he had a moment of clarity, he would talk about you. The woman in the snow who stopped. Grace touched the cold statue. He changed my life. Tariq nodded. You changed each other's lives. And now, hundreds of other lives are being changed here. He looked around. This is what my father always wanted his wealth to do. Create ripples of kindness. That night, Grace returned home where her 3 children, all in college, had prepared dinner. Marcus was studying medicine. Jasmine was studying to be a lawyer. David was studying to be a teacher. All because an exhausted mother had stopped on a freezing night to help a stranger. Before going to sleep, Grace always looked out the window. Sometimes she saw people rushing by who needed help. And she always whispered a prayer that someone would stop, that someone would see, that someone would care. Because the difference between despair and hope is often just one person willing to reach out. The snow fell softly outside, just like that night 5 years ago. But now Grace knew that even in the coldest storm, a single light of kindness can change everything. For her, for Khalid, and for everyone who would learn that doing the right thing, even when it costs everything, is always worth it. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it. Because somewhere right now, someone is lost in the snow of life, waiting for you to stop and reach out. Be that person.